the first killings were in January, and the first one was Serhiy Nihayan, who was ethnic Armenian, young guy. I think he was sports teacher by his education.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Turkish foreign minister, Mevlut Çavuşoğlu, made a speech calling for Syrians not under Assad domination to reconcile with the Syrian dictator. This was the people's response. First video was from Azaz, Syria, a northern town of just 30,000 people that has been under Turkish control for several years. In case you don't know, the Assad-Putin war against free Syrians continues. 19 were killed in a bombing attack in the Al-Bab region just days ago. We saw this new solidarity poster with Gaza, and then came across this video of this injured but unintimidated little girl.
أساساً اليهود مش دولة، كمان تحت راجل تحت كمان على الأرض وهذه زبالة مش دولة عشان نقتل الأطفال. ويمكن الحين قصفين دارنا لأنه قصفوا دارنا ديك المرة بدأت الحرب. Now, to a rally held in Middletown, Connecticut, in support of Palestine and in opposition to the latest Gaza massacre.
Gaza, Gaza, don't you cry!
Gaza, Gaza, don't you cry!
Palestine will never die!
Palestine will never die!
Occupation is a crime!
Occupation is a crime!
From Middletown to Palestine!
From Middletown to Palestine!
Occupation is a crime!
Occupation is a crime!
From Middletown to Palestine!
Stop the occupation! End settler colonial violence! End the land dispossession! Support and stand in solidarity with Palestine and Palestinians fighting for their freedom! Don't cower to the lobbyists!
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Only difference is the name! Fight it from the same! Is the name! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine!
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Peace be with you all. It's so wonderful to see you all here today, but at the same time it's heartbreaking to stand up here for the minimum and least human right is the right of living. We are here protesting today for the killing of the Palestinian people and Palestinian children. 47 civilians got killed in Gaza in the last attack. 17 are children. They have no crime, but they were born on a Palestinian land in the region of Gaza. Everyone has the right to live. Everyone has the right to get educated and serve the world community. But the Palestinian children, they have no right to live. They have no right to education. They have no right to continue their life in peaceful way. Few years ago, I met a Palestinian girl from Gaza, Lama Abed, a 13 or 14 years old who was full of smiles, full of joy and happiness. She was talking about her dream to become a doctor, to save lives. She was talking about another dream to be a cowgirl, first cowgirl in Gaza, to provide milk for the children in Gaza who has no access to milk for the children. Few days ago, unfortunately, we have received a video from Lama Abed, the same girl. She was sad, she was all in black, and she was talking about luggage, and every Gazan home has the most important stuff. They were so ready to leave their homes, to go to the street, just because they were afraid of the attack, they were afraid of the bombardment, the Israeli bombardment on their homes. 47 civilian, Palestinian, Gazan people lost their life under the Israelis' attack. I urge every one of you to go to Tree of Life's page and look at the videos and show some support. Thank you everybody for being here. I just would like to let you know that every single day more than $4 million goes to Israeli occupation. More than $4 billion goes to the Israeli crimes out of your own tax money. Please go ahead and call on your representative. Send messages, send letters. Ask them to stop sending and using your tax money toward killing around the world. In Palestine, in Syria, in Iraq, and everywhere else. You have the right to use your money, your tax money, to build schools, homes, shelters here in America, not to be used for killing civilians. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to see Muslim, Christian, Jews are here. They're all on the same path. For the Muslims, they are following the وَقُلْ اعْمَلُوا فَسَيَرَى اللَّهُ عَمَلَكُمْ وَرَسُولُهُ وَالْمُؤْمِنُونَ. You know, in the Quran it has been mentioned, go ahead, do something. Allah and His Messenger and the believers will see what you do. And for the Christian and Jews, they are following the footsteps of Moses and Jesus, that they never allowed staying under occupation or staying under the oppression. Be free and ask for freedom. Free, free Palestine.
Good talk. Great. I am surprised. I am so happily surprised. You know, we came here, we thought maybe we'd have 4 people. And we what's going to happen? Palestine. We don't know what it's going to be like. We've never really been here in Middletown doing this. But look at this reception. People honking, truck drivers, all sorts of people. The cause of justice is popular, but we just got to get the word out. I'm going to call on Phil Brewer from Jewish Voice for Peace for a few words.
I'm an ER doctor, and I want to say a word about the medical problems in Palestine, especially in Gaza. Jewish Voice for Peace has a medical committee. All right, I'm going to stop a second because we've got a fire truck coming by.
Let people pass. Let people pass.
Before I make my statement. It's very important that we keep the sidewalk, that we keep a passage open through the sidewalk and the crosswalk so that anybody walking along isn't blocked. So a lot of you have signs showing pictures of people who were killed by the most recent attack on Gaza. There's another kind of massacre that goes on every single day, and that is the lack of access to health care. If you are a resident of Gaza and your child has a very serious infection, your father is having a heart attack, your sister is in labor and having complications of labor, there are not enough materials, electricity, personnel in the hospitals in Gaza to take care of them. And if they get in an ambulance and go to the border crossing in an attempt to get medical care in Israel, they very often will be denied access. And every year there are hundreds of people who die in ambulances for lack of access to medical care. To me, that is just as heinous as dropping bombs on children, because the end result is the same. So there are more reasons, there are many, many reasons to oppose the situation, and for me, that's a very important one.
Thank you, Phil Brewer. Let's have a cheer, applause.
So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming and showing support for Palestine. My name is Laura Schleifer, and I work with Promoting Enduring Peace, and I'm also the co-founder of Food Justice, Food Sovereignty, and Community Project team in Gaza called Plant the Land. Not another nickel, not another dime.
Not another nickel, not another dime.
No more money for Israel's crimes.
No more money for Israel's crimes.
Free, free Palestine.
Free, free Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
Occupation is a crime.
From Middletown to Palestine.
Middletown to Palestine.
Occupation is a crime.
Occupation is a crime.
From Middletown to Palestine.
Middletown to Palestine.
With Congress frankly closed to us by Israel's role as the bully boy for the empire, and the recent new aggressiveness of AIPAC, street demonstrations are the way to go. Let's have more of them, and let's get them bigger and bigger. We showed you this photo of 10-year-old Layan al-Shaer last week, one of the children in Gaza killed by the Israelis. She didn't die right away. She was in a Jerusalem hospital for several days. Brad Parker of Defense of Children International wrote, Layan died alone in the hospital in Jerusalem. No family at her side, no mother or father holding her hand. Hospital staff prayed over her body because Israel would not let any of her family accompany her to the hospital. This is another photo of the martyred child. And a few days ago, Israel raided the offices of 6 of the best-known Palestinian human rights groups. They came in, stole equipment, searched through files, and then left and welded the doors shut. In Israel apartheid speak, Palestinian human rights groups are made up of terrorists. One of the groups was one we just mentioned, Defense of Children International, Palestine. The United Nations, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, together in unison on August 12th, condemned the 34-year prison sentence meted to Saudi student Salma al-Shihab for expressing her opinion on Twitter about the human rights situation in Saudi Arabia. Now again, we talk about 2014 in Ukraine to refute the lies of the Putin enablers who claim the uprising that year was all a U.S. plot. We speak to Denys Pilash, who took part in on-the-street actions. I'll be speaking to Denys Pilash, who is in Kyiv, Ukraine. He's a political scientist in Socialny Ruch, which translates as social movement, and is on the board of the Commons Journal of Social Criticism. On a Zoom event last week that was talking about the 2014 uprising in Ukraine, Denys made a comment that people constantly talk about the supposed conspiracy directed by U.S. official Victoria Nuland during the 2013-14 winter. But none of these people know the names of the actual Ukrainians killed or beaten during those protests. So I wanted to learn more about that, so I asked Denys Pilash for an interview, and he agreed. Good afternoon, Denys.
Hello.
As I understand it, the Maidan demonstration started with student protests in 2013. Could you give some background?
Well, first of all, we need to say that there is, in recent Ukrainian history, there was a strife of these constant mobilizations. Every several years, we had some big protest event. And well, one of them was this 2013 Maidan protest. And well, it was triggered by some geopolitical decisions made by the government, but actually it had lots of other reasons for its unfolding. And yes, it's often framed as being this first stage as mostly a youth protest, and that this dispersal, first brutal dispersal of the protest on the night of 30th November was the dispersal beating up the students. But it wasn't exclusively student, and well, and it wasn't even so much framed as like they are students, but it was mostly framed in some terms of you know, pro-democracy, pro-European, and so on.
So in these first protests, you talk about people being beaten. How bad was it? Were people killed at this stage or badly injured?
They were badly injured, but it was, again, it was something like a last drop, because previous years we've seen some looming of police brutality and protest against police brutality. So we had just prior to this Maidan protests, there were events like policemen killing a student who was taken to their police department called Iharindilo, or a natural uprising in a small town or village where a local woman was raped and killed by a group of people, including a policeman. And this led to some huge outrage of the population, because it was indicative of a more broad police brutality, police violence. And then we had this event that like the protest culminated in a very brutal dispersal, beating up by the riot police. And I had an experience many years prior to that, when we were staging a protest against this the local government, the local administration in Kyiv was increasing very dramatically the fare for public transportation in the city, and this protest was also dispersed by the Ukrainian riot police, Berkut, at that point, and it's really brutal. So it's no wonder that the public reaction was like that.
Do you know some of the names of the people who were hurt in that November, those November protests?
We know mostly the names of the people who were hurt and killed in the upfolding this of a standoff between the protesters and the police, because the first killings were in January, and the first one was Serhiy Nihayan, who was ethnic Armenian young guy. I think he was sports teacher by his education, and like he was killed in cold blood because he wasn't violent by the policeman. So this was the first victim who was actually killed with firearms by the police, and then the next month, February, came this infamous massacre on the Institutska Street, where almost 100 people have been killed.
So let me go back a step. So in November was the first big protest, brutally put down, and then people, instead of running home, people got angry and came to the Maidan in Kyiv, and they were there in January. And were you there at that point yourself?
Yes, and well, you see, for our group and for many other leftists, the first stage was actually dubious, because it was about the signing the association agreement with the EU, and actually the Yanukovych government was it has led, as all previous governments, it was very neoliberal and very corrupt, and it has led the budget to some deficit, and they were desperate in finding where they can get foreign loans, and so they did a U-turn. So they first declared that they will, though Yanukovych was generally perceived as a pro-Russian and a member of a pro-Russian party of the biggest capitalist in Ukraine, the Party of Regions, but despite this, he at some point declared that Ukraine is going to sign this agreement. And then at the last stage, he stepped back and made this U-turn and went to Russia for money to close this hole in the budget. But obviously, it went with political demands on the side of the Kremlin. And we saw this, that it's all these models, all these orientations, be it Western or pro-Russian, they are well controversial, and they are not so benefitable for Ukrainian economy. So we supported the political part of the association agreement with the EU that brought more guarantees.
Wait. You say you supported the political part of what?
Of the association agreement with the EU that has to be,
with the
EU,
to be
signed. But we didn't support the free trade zone due to its obviously neoliberal nature. But after this police brutality, it was something like a point of no return. That we understand that if the government prevails and it suppresses this protest, it also suppresses any kind of independent activity, and Ukraine becomes something more akin to Lukashenko's Belarus.
So you went down. So you personally went down to the Maidan.
Yes. So
did you go every day, or did you camp there?
First time we were there in a very organized manner. It was immediately after this dispersal. There was a big spontaneous, huge, at least half of million people, a spontaneous march against police brutality. And we had there a column with leftist, anarchist, and trade unionist activists, as it was very specific about this no to police state demand. And in general, we were trying to attend all these major events that occurred usually on weekends, where more people.
More in a future program. Just a mention now that Lebanon is still investigating the explosion from 2 years ago that left most of the Beirut port leveled. Incompetence at the highest level, and no one is punished. To end on a positive note, after the rally in Middletown, Connecticut, we noticed these 3 paintings on the front of what was Schlein's furniture store. They're really so good. We'll try to find out more about them. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.